Today's video, we're going to do about a company from humble beginnings again. Started with $10,000 and 2 trucks out of somebody's home and eventually grew into the 5th largest company in the United States when it was sold. And I'm talking about MS Carriers. As we get started into this video, we're going to talk about a giveaway that we're doing when I hit 10,000 subscribers. And actually right now I'm at 9,075. So 925 more to go, and then we're doing a giveaway. And it is from Brunt Workwear. They sent me a pair of boots. Right here I have them, and they actually let me go on their website and pick out which ones I wanted. And they're going to do the same. So anybody who comments on this video or any video from here up until any video that I've released from here up until the time of the of hitting 10,000 subscribers, we're gonna pick a winner from that, and you'll get a hold of Brunt, and Brunt will let you pick out a pair of boots and they'll send it to you. So let's get talking about MS Carriers. All right, so in 1968, a man named Michael Starnes graduated from Ole Miss. That'll come into some things later, but graduated from Ole Miss with a business degree. And 10 years later, he founded a company in Memphis, Tennessee. Out of his home, he had $10,000 and 2 trucks, and that became MS Carriers, I guess, for Michael Starnes Carriers. And yeah, so the company pretty much continued to grow its whole history. You know, some of these companies have bad, sad stories and different things that happen. My last video had all kinds of corruption in it. This one doesn't. Michael Starnes was a pretty good guy and obviously knew what he was doing. In 1986, the company went public. And by 1987, they had terminals in Jackson, Tennessee, Nashville, Memphis, Tupelo, Mississippi, and Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And so then by 1993, they had 1,900 trucks. That's pretty good growth for 15 years. Wow, that's way more than 100 trucks a year. Yeah, anyway, 1994, they had revenues of $292 million. And 10% of their freight was going to Mexico by then. They were taking it into Mexico. There's a lot of different things that Michael Starnes tried to do as far as basically owning certain markets, like within 500 miles of his terminals. He found that 70% of freight moves less than 500 miles at the time. I don't know what the case is now. But he was pretty strategic in certain things that he tried to do with having all that. In 1994, MS Carriers established MS Logistics, which became part of MS Carriers. And of course, that was a brokerage. Basically, they said they handled supply chain, things like that, but mainly it was a brokerage. But yeah, this company just continued to grow, and he was a pretty charitable guy. He was involved in a lot of different organizations. Apparently, he was part of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce at one point. He's president of multiple entrepreneur associations. Really just seems like a good guy. So in the year of 2000, MS decided to do a big partnership. And it was supposed to be the biggest 4PL partnership ever. It was basically they invested $5 million and put their brokerage firm, MS Logistics, into it. So the other companies involved with that were US Express, Covenant Transportation, Werner, Swift, and JB Hunt. And it was called Transplace, which a lot of people have probably heard of. Well, for this company, within 10 years, it was a huge failure. They pretty much all lost their brokerages, and they lost their initial investment. It was pretty much all written off. I don't know why this was, because they actually ended up selling out to a private equity firm who turned it into a huge company and ended up selling it for $1 billion to Uber Freight. It's actually part of Uber Freight now. I think that's who they sold it to, but either way, now it is part of Uber Freight and still a powerhouse in the broker industry. I don't deal with brokers. Maybe some of you guys can comment as to what kind of company Uber Freight and that is to deal with. I've been with Landstar so long, that's pretty much what I do. It was a failure for them, but can you imagine these big mega carriers, fighting over what the right way is to do this, do this? That's the only thing I can think, is that there was way too many chiefs in this, and very high up people. Yeah, but it failed for them. But really, that was Michael Starnes' only failure in the trucking industry, as far as I've seen. We're going to talk about how the company ended, but it wasn't a bad ending for Michael Starnes. It wasn't a bankruptcy. It was a pretty good deal for him. And yeah, let's get into that. So one of the biggest things that Michael Starnes did ever, one of his biggest charities ever, was he donated $1 million to Ole Miss for their athletic training center. And it's actually named after him. I'll show you a picture here. Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. But so in December of 2000, Swift bought MS Carriers for $384 million. There was stock involved, all kinds of stuff, but $384 million. At the time, MS Carriers was the fifth largest trucking company in the United States, truckload carrier in the United States. Always got to remember to say that. LTLs were pretty big then. When they joined together, it would actually create the second largest by revenue truckload carrier in the United States, beat only by J.B. Hunt. So that's pretty big. At the time they did that, MS Carriers employed about 5,000 people. And of course had a lot of terminals. And this actually allowed MS Carriers to operate for 3 years, even though they were owned by Swift, for 3 years until dissolved into the Swift mill. A lot of people call it the Swift mill, and I've started saying that. And by the way, one of these days we're going to do a story on Swift, but I want to do a story on all the smaller companies that went into Swift over the years first, because it's a pretty big story. I've done so many already that involved it. Dick Simon was eaten up by Swift. MS Carriers was eaten up by Swift. But this wasn't any kind of weird takeover or anything. I mean, he sold it. He was still, Michael Starnes was still a huge shareholder in Swift after all this was over with. I don't know if he still is. I'm actually having some trouble finding anything out about him past his actual career. I did read there was like a weird court filing I was able to find something about, and that just had to do with just some family stuff. But I did hear that apparently at one point he had a pretty near fatal stroke, and left him kind of little bit disabled, speech impediments and things like that. A lot of the things that go along with strokes. So that was pretty much all I could find out about him. I was looking for obituaries to see if he passed, and I couldn't find anything. So I got to assume he's still with us. If anybody knows, let me know. There are quite a few Michael Starnes that were coming up, but I did some searching. I just could not find it. I know that he's remarried, or was remarried, and that's what that whole weird family thing came about. But that's not what this channel's about. But overall, I mean, people would say being bought up by Swift is not a good thing. I said it wasn't a bad thing, and I'm sure the drivers that worked for MS didn't want to go work for Swift. It seems like nobody really wants to go work for Swift until, people are happy there. So, it's not an anti-Swift thing, but you drivers know what I mean. You don't want to go from a company called the White Stallion to having Swift on the side of your truck. But Yeah, by the way, MS Carriers was called the White Stallions, as you probably saw in my thumbnail. But yeah, anyway, this one ended well. This is, as far as I'm concerned, I chalk this up to one of the great guys in the industry. You know, I've talked about Dick Simon, I've talked about Harry Muehlschlegel, and we've also talked about some real bad people in the industry, or some corrupt things that have happened in this industry. But there are some good companies, some guys that build them up good and retired very well. And I also can't find much out about his legacy, children, anything like that. He must have been a fairly private person, because there's, except for some organizations he was involved in, there's not a lot of talk about him. But yeah. So this video was a bit shorter. Sorry there wasn't any kind of crazy, corruption or anything in this, but hey, sometimes it's nice to do a nice story. Story about the good guys, and so, thanks for watching. Yeah, and again, make sure you comment. There's the boots again. These are the ones I have. They have multiple colors, they have multiple styles, they have lots of nice stuff on there. And I'll put a in the video description, I'll put a link to Brunt Workwear. And if you want to dream shop to wait to see if you win, and then, well, if not, maybe you want to buy a pair anyway. But I know I like them, and I'm going to get a lot more wear out of them once this heat breaks, but not for right now. But thank you guys, as always. Keep the comments coming. I love the comments, and now the comments get you an entry into the giveaway. But I still love to hear the stories. For those of you guys that know something I didn't mention about MS Carriers, please put it down there. I know a lot of people read the comments. And also, you can email me if you'd like, anytime. I'll put my email down here. It's finchresources@gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram under the Trucking Resources name. I'm going to start doing a lot of things. I keep saying this. I'm going to start doing some things as far as the next carriers that I put out that we're going to do, and let people vote on them, because I love doing all these trucking companies. But yeah, anyway, I'll catch you on the next one.